Welcome. This is the review of the One More triple driver over-the-ear headphones. First things first, please ignore this cover over the headband. This is something I've salvaged from an old DT150 from Biodynamic, and it's kind of nice because it actually fits the headband size perfectly in length. It goes right around it, and I've managed to secure the fasteners at each end, but not in the middle. As you can see, the cover is just a bit too small for the headband. However, that's no consequence because this jacket is stiff. It just flicks over and it's very, very stable. So it's a great addition, actually, I think, to the headband to protect the lovely headband. And I really do approve of this jacket system by Biodynamic. So that's why it's a bit different. In case you don't already know, this is what it should look like with the silver thread on the side of the headband. So that's what I'm protecting under the cover. Now, by the way, while I'm at it, let's just take a quick look at the box it comes in. This is not an unboxing video, there are plenty of those of this headphone, but it comes in a beautiful box. It looks like a book for a bookshelf, and it's got a magnetic catch. When you open it, it's got all these beautiful looking Da Vinci style engravings and so on, so it's really good. Also, it comes in this really nice pouch, and it doesn't have too many accessories. It does have a velvet thing inside there for covering, a velvet pouch as well, but this is a very nice carrying pouch. So I think this headphone will be a bit of a collector's item, frankly, for reasons which we'll get to, but it's beautifully presented and it's really good. I got this for about I think roughly €150 or something. You'll get them easy on Amazon now. They seem to have sold quite a number of these headphones, and I'm tempted. I won't be surprised if in the future I'm tempted to buy a second one of these. This is in silver. They also come in gold, rose gold, and it also looks very, very well. Now, let's talk about the ear pads. These are classed as an over-the-ear headphone. They're not really. They're too small for over-the-ear, and they're too big for on-ear, a little bit. So they're somewhere between the two. Now, I happen to have very small ears, and if we have a look here at this headphone dummy from Mini DSP, my ears happen to be actually about the size of the dummy ears here. The very same size, actually. So when we fit the headphone over, you'll see that it goes over the ear, but it doesn't quite cover it clearly on the inside. It does on the outside. The headphone has a lot of pressure, and talking about decibels and sound isolation, normally when I get a pair of headphones and I put them on me, I do simply this with my fingers outside the headphone cup just to make a sound like that, and normally you'll get a little sound in a typical closed headphone, but these you can hear absolutely nothing when you do this. So they really make the seal very, very well on my ears. Not so much on this dummy headphone, because bear in mind, my ears are much softer than this. Specifically in my ears, when the headphone goes onto my ears, the lobes are really soft, and it just goes right in, and it makes a fantastic seal. But other people do have problems with making seals with this headphone because of the size. And I've seen graphs somewhere, and I will be doing graphs on this headphone myself hopefully soon. I've seen graphs that where there is bass lost on the graph because the seal isn't properly made. So be mindful of that if you've got very big ears. Now, in terms of comfort, ideally I would prefer an over-the-ear headphone. For comfort, I don't really like on-the-ear headphones, but I made an exception on this occasion, and I'm kind of glad I did, because they sound really fantastic. In terms of comfort, I find that they're okay. They make a very, very good seal. The clamping pressure is quite a bit. The only discomfort I find is about after half an hour maybe, the lobes start to get a bit hot. Now in my case, I just simply reseat the cup for a second and it's okay. So these are not the most uncomfortable headphones I've ever had by any means, but they're not as comfortable as an over-the-ear headphone. Now on that note, you can, and people actually have, removed these pads and changed them for bigger pads. Now I have to say, if you want to do this, you actually have to remove these pads are glued in, so you have to remove the pads by force. You have to prise it open. Not the best arrangement. Nonetheless, there are no shortage of candidates pads that you can refit. And you have here a stainless steel lip that you can flick the new pad, the replacement pad over. So there's a lot of possibilities. In terms of what type of pad to replace it with, well, if we look here, I have an old set of Koss. These are the Tony Bennett headphones. These are, I think, a fraction bigger than the One More's in diameter, not really much bigger. So these will be a good diameter pad. Make it a fraction bigger if you're replacing pads. However, specifically, those particular pads from the Koss, they're so shallow. They're the most uncomfortable pad I've ever had, actually. And I've even changed different pads onto these Koss units. So the point is that that's a good diameter to use, maybe, if you're replacing pads for this down the line. So you've got comfort. Like I say, they're okay. I find them okay, but I'm blessed to have small ears. If you've got big ears, you may have problems with these. They do make a serious seal. And now these are triple driver headphones. And apart from the famous look of the Maserati wheel on the outside, apparently you get a pair of these when you buy a Maserati. I can't remember which model Maserati. Haven't bought one lately, so I couldn't tell you that. Apart from the looks and the fashion aspect of it, they're a very interesting headphone because they're a triple driver, or should I say 2.5 drivers maybe. They've got a ceramic tweeter, and I'll put up an illustration of that. You've got a ceramic tweeter. You've got the main driver, and then you've got a base reflector. And this is a passive reflector, and I don't know if you can see that here on the camera. You'll see the actual, what looks like the driver inside. That's the base reflector inside the glass area. And that simply is like a traditional headphone driver, except I gather it doesn't have any electricity in it, so it's passive rather than active. So that's why I say it's kind of 2.5 element headphone as opposed to a 3 element headphone. But they're advertising it as a 3 element headphone. Nonetheless, it makes for a very, very interesting listen. Now also, there was something when these headphones came out a couple of years back about them being graphene. They're supposed to be graphene, and then the narrative was changed to titanium drivers. The ones I've just got recently, these ones, they actually say graphene on the box. So maybe they did actually change in the production line later on and actually put in graphene in the end. I'm not really sure. Either way, they sound really quite fantastic. Now, I'll put up the frequency response graph and we'll have a look at that. So what do they sound like? The all-important question. Well, I think they're a collector's item because, first of all, looking at the curve, the bass, a lot of people have spoken about the bass on these. There's a fair spike in the bass that scare some people off at the 100 hertz frequency. You'll see that clearly from the curve. I have to say I was a bit apprehensive before I got them because I hear that they were over bassy, too warm in the bass, too boomy and so on. That's not what I found. In my opinion, I listen to a lot of classical music, as well as acoustic of all kind, country, pop, rock, all sorts of stuff. To my ears, they're warm, but they're not too warm. They're just nice. There's enough bass there to add atmosphere and warmth. They're a very, very nice listen. One good example about the bass frequency, they place things very well. They will produce real and I think reliable bass, so it's not just simply diffused bass either. A good example is Rhinestone Cowboy, Glenn Campbell. On this song, the bass appears slightly to the left, being plucked away, and you can hear it very, very clear and very, very well placed. So these things love to party, I have to say. They love to go out wide. They're really great like this because you have three elements of functionality. I was going to say layers of functionality. You've got basically three elements of sound functionality here. You have the bass drivers, which are passive. You've got the main drivers, and then you've got the little ceramic tweeters. So there are, beside each ear, outside each ear, left and right, you have three different elements making different noises. So you've got a lot of different things, instruments around you making different sounds. 6 elements in all. And this creates, I think, a lot of depth, a lot of wide sound stage, which I just simply love. So many headphones, like for example, the Civica 006, these ones here, which I really must do a review of. I've changed the pads to brainwaves to widen the soundstage. These are wonderful sounding headphones, but they're very, very bright, and they're so bright they really need more soundstage. And that's their big downfall. They need more soundstage because there's too much happening, simply, inside these headphones. There's too much sound. It's too busy, it's too congested. But these are distinctly different. In the case of the One Mores, because of the 3 elements each side of your head, they widen out the soundstage. And the effect is really, really good. And very, very interesting and curious. Now, I've always had a thing for double drive headphones. Headphones with 2 drivers or more. This is the clear headphone, which I have the last few years, kind of well worn now. I do like it. I found it a very interesting headphone. There is a double driver headphone. This is the Clear DU, double unit, I think. And I don't know if you can see that there. You have actually 2 drivers, but they're differently arranged. It's like upstairs, downstairs. You have the bass unit and the treble unit, 2 40mm drivers. So yeah, Juco, there's 4 of them in total. So there's a lot of noise there. These things go louder than anything you've ever heard, if that's what you're into. But they split the soundstage like upstairs and downstairs, kind of, which is interesting. But it's not wide, and they're certainly interesting. I would have done them a little bit different if I was designing these. They'd be a good headphone, I think, for modification. Interesting stuff. And I should, if I can find the graph, I'll put up the graph to these, because looking at the graph for this, they really are, true to their name, very, very clear. But they have a dip in the 3.5 kilohertz frequency, and it's a kind of loss of information, and consequently certain sounds, like a saxophone sound, doesn't sound as healthy or as emphasized as it should. So it's a curious dip. It can be corrected, by the way, with velour pads from brainwaves. You don't have such a loss in that frequency if you change it. But a very, very interesting headphone, and so cheap, and well worth the buy, I think, if you can get one nowadays. They also incidentally have beautiful pads, so they will be a candidate pad to put on these, maybe when the time comes, although they're slightly oval. Okay, so back to these. So the sound consequently is really beautiful. The tonality is fabulous, and when I first heard the sound, I said, well, they're no different from the K7 K712s from AKG. That's what I normally have as my go-to headphone to compare other headphones to. And they sound really fantastic, the K712s to me. And then I thought to myself, well, actually, you can say that again. They don't sound that much different from the K712, except that they're a bit brighter in tonality, but not like the Civicas, the 006s, which are too bright, frankly. So they have a certain bit of, a certain darkness to them as well, but not too much, and not too much brightness either. But the main story to these headphones is the placement, the soundstage and the placement, what they do, the interesting things that they do to the instruments and the way they distribute instruments and sound. Not necessarily the most accurate, because a normal traditional headphones with one driver each side of your ear will attempt to deliver the sound as it was recorded or intended to be when they were setting the pan settings in the recording studio. But this is not the case here, so it's a bit of a lottery as to how the sound is going to come out. It's as though somebody was changing the pan positions in the original recordings or something like that. But that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, frankly. And so they're wonderfully entertaining. Now, the other thing is, because of the amazing insulation, they're minus 23 decibels when measured. Tile at Inner Fidelity before he retired, and that's incredible with the insulation. So this means that you can have these at very, very low levels, and that's really good because they're really clear and you can have them on at very, very low levels. These headphones do not need an amp and don't really do great with an amplifier. For example, I have a very good amplifier here in this microphone, and that's fantastic. It really drives them brilliantly. But I normally listen to these quite a lot out of the Android mobile phone, and they sound perfect. I typically have it set at 1 to 4, between 1 and 4 out of 10. And no matter what I'm listening to on these, and everything sounds very, very clear. So you can listen to it for hours and hours at very, very low levels and hear absolutely everything because of the really fantastic insulation. They make a fantastic seal, even if they're not that comfortable. So that's really amazing. That's a fantastic thing. So I would love to see more manufacturers going along this line. And if I ever make a headphone myself, I think I'll take a page out of this particular book. So, highly recommended. I think they're going to become a classic. They're a collector's item for sure, the way they're packed and presented and everything. And I fancy the rose gold ones next time round myself. They're very well made. One gripe I have is, well, I have two problems with them. First of all, you have these connectors here. They're 2.5 millimeters. They might be a bit hard to get or pick up. This is a cloth cable, very, very nice material, cloth material cable. But in my experience, these can be a bit unreliable and they suddenly break. They're not so good as the usual cable, so it might be a good idea to maybe order one of these cables from somewhere or source one and have it in case it breaks, because inevitably I think will break in time. Now the other problem I have is, although there's fantastic sound, if we look at the sound graph, the frequency response, we see, and I'll put up the graph, you have a high rise in the bass for sure. But then it goes pretty much fairly flat curved, nothing out of the ordinary. It doesn't overemphasize. After the 4 kilohertz rise, it settles down on the 5 and 6, which is a good thing. So you don't have any spikes there, and that's a very, very good thing. So they're not too bright. Then it drops at the 7 dramatically. That's the only place there's a real drop in the frequency response, 7 kilohertz, and it rises immediately to 8, and then to 9 and 10 go high, very high. Now I like headphones that sparkle in the very high frequencies like that, 9 and 10 and 11 and so on, and above 10 it sparkles, it goes really high also. That's no doubt because of the ceramic tweeters that you have here. But that 7 kilohertz dip, it's a drastic dip. It looks like the drastic dip. It reminds me of the one that I spoke about earlier in the clear DUs at 3.5 kilohertz. You're basically missing some information. It really doesn't come up with too much consequence, but one consequence I've noticed, I think, is that when you hear sound of strumming acoustic guitars, for example, on David Bowie's Space Oddity or something, or ELO, Fire and High, for example, and you have really clean sounding, lone strumming guitars, it lacks a bit there. It's not so much muddy, I would say, but it's de-emphasized, and you don't have the exciting. There are certain recordings which highlight this guitar strumming really well here and there, and they don't come across so exciting on this, but it does everything else in terms of detail very, very well. And it's an eventful listen because it creates the soundstage. As I say, it has some very good imaging, and the thing I like about dual driver headphones is that they tend to do things a little bit unexpectedly and different. And that's always good in the world of headphones. Absolutely. So, highly recommended. I think groundbreaking, if I'm honest. And the prices come down, and long may they live. I certainly will be giving them a high recommendation. And if you haven't listened to them, try and have a listen to them. If you're tempted to get them as a headphone enthusiast, they're around about €150 right now. And you'll probably get them cheaper. They seem to have made quite a few of these. If you look at them in any Amazon platform, there are hundreds of reviews of them. So I gather that they've become quite a popular headphone. So it would always be worth, if you think you might like them, you could always buy them. And if you don't like them, you'll definitely get takers and buyers for them, and you'll be able to sell them on without losing too much money on it, I think. But a beautiful piece of work, and so exciting in the sound, and so refreshing to come across it. And I'm really glad I got it. Okay, thanks.